Our movie begins with a man named Gistino who tries to lure his wife's dog to get rid of it by throwing bait over it, but the bait ends up tied to the balcony and he can't get rid of the dog. The dog escapes and Gistino talks to his wife, telling her that the dog always does something inside his shoes, so he wants to get rid of it. This is Renzo, Gistino's older son, and his wife Laura just arrived home a while ago. We get to know Sandro, who bullies a girl with his friends and laughs at her because she has hair on her face. After a short while, Sandro's mother calls him to take some things to his brother Renzo's car. Renzo says goodbye to Laura, touching her hand. Sandro sees the situation and discovers that Sandro loves Laura. The next day, Sandro takes Laura to the beach. At that time, the men at the beach look at her and admire her beauty. Laura puts sunscreen on her body, and Sandro looks at her, becoming more attracted to her day by day. After that, Sandro's friends come, and they see Laura's beauty and start talking about it, but Sandro doesn't like the conversation. Sandro asks them to leave, and a girl comes and asks Sandro to go with her, but Sandro refuses because he has put all his attention on Laura. The same evening, Sandro goes with his friends to the barn, and there are two people there in a relationship. They throw some things at them and quickly leave the place. The next day, Sandro and Laura are on the beach with his friends calling him to play with them, but Sandro refuses because he wants to stay with Laura. Laura is not happy with the situation and asks Sandro to go and play with his friends because he doesn't have to stay next to her all the time. Sandro reluctantly goes to play with his friends. After a while, Renzo returns and flirts with Laura. Sandro sees them and becomes very upset. At night, Sandro is with his friends going somewhere, and on the way, they see Laura with Renzo. Sandro gets upset because he is in love with Laura, so he takes his friends and leaves the place. When Sandro returns home, he hears Laura's voice from her room because their rooms are adjacent. He eavesdrops, but Laura's voice doesn't please him. In the morning, Renzo goes to work and Laura goes to the beach with Sandro. However, Sandro looks at her strangely and starts getting closer, helping her with everything. Laura notices Sandro's interest and begins to treat him kindly, caring for him. Over time, they become very close to the point that Laura applies sunscreen to Sandro's back, and she asks him a strange request to wear her dress to see how he looks in it. Gistino, seeing his son wearing a dress, thinks it's unnatural and wonders why he spends so much time with Laura. The next day at the beach, Laura changes her clothes in front of Sandro, revealing their close relationship. Later, they take a small boat into the sea, with Laura vomiting and Sandro trying to get closer to her but remembering she's his brother's wife and stepping back. At night, while sleeping, Sandro hears Laura's voice again and decides to go check on her. He watches her with Renzo, then goes back to his room and uses headphones to eavesdrop on their conversation. In the morning, Renzo goes to work in another city, and we see Sandro's behavior changing towards Laura. He starts talking to her in a bad way, and Laura notices his actions and gets upset. When she goes to her room to change her clothes, she asks Sandro to leave, but he refuses, saying he will change his ways. After a while, he starts getting closer to her again. However, Laura slaps him on the face, and he recognizes her voice coming from the room. Laura tells him that she is working with Renzo on a play, which is why he hears voices. Sandro knows that her words are all lies. Afterward, he goes to a friend and tries to get close to her, imagining her as Laura. However, she hits him on the face. At night, Renzo calls and says he won't come home today, asking his brother to tell Laura. When Laura learns this, she feels sad because she had prepared herself and was wearing a new dress. Sandro sees her sad, asks her to go with him to the party. At first, Laura refuses, but later she agrees to go with him. Later, we see Renzo with another girl, revealing that he is cheating on Laura. This is the reason he returned home. We go back to Sandro at the party, feeling upset because Laura is dancing with a stranger and people are saying bad things about her. Sandro overhears everything. His friend asks him to dance with her, but he refuses because all his focus is on Laura, and because everyone is looking at her and talking badly about her. They leave the party together, and Laura is upset because they left quickly. Sandro tells her that the guys were thinking wrong about her, and that's why they left. Laura begins to understand that Sandro has started to love her and gets jealous for her. At that moment, Laura kisses him, but then she remembers that he is her husband's brother and pulls back. Sandro calls his brother and tells him that his wife is nice. His brother thinks he's joking. After ending the call, the next day Laura tells Sandro that she drank a lot yesterday and asks him to forget what happened because it was a mistake. Then Renzo returns home and Laura screams loudly from her room to make sure the sound doesn't reach Sandro's room. After that, Renzo takes her to the party and Laura dances with Sandro, telling him that the sound won't reach from her room to his, but he insists focus a bit and you'll hear it. He begins to touch her and Laura doesn't react much to the situation. Here, we understand that she is beginning to love him. Afterward, they go to the cinema with Sandro and his friend. There, he continues to touch her, but Laura stops him. However, he persists and touches her body again, and Laura remains silent. The next day, the house is empty except for Sandro and Laura. Sandro is reading when Laura enters, takes the book, and Sandro approaches her. Laura loses control, and love happens between them. Renzo returns home, hears their car, and they distance themselves. At night, Renzo and Laura are together, and their voices reach Sandro's room. He can't control himself and starts watching them from the door. He decides to go to the beach. The next day, Laura notices Sandro's absence and asks Renzo to find him. Renzo says that Sandro always disappears but eventually returns. After a short while, Laura is not reassured, so she goes to the beach herself to look for him. There, she asks a friend about him, and he tells her that Sandro is in the beach cabin. Laura quickly goes to the cabin, finding Sandro. Both apologize to each other. After a while, Renzo and the whole family go there, and Laura tells them that Sandro is okay on the beach. Sandro then goes to them, and everyone is happy that they are all well. They gather at home, drink together, and Laura and Sandro look at each other happily. The film ends with the family celebrating their reunion. If you liked the film, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and see you in the next film. Goodbye.